Everyone thought Liam Bennett was just a desperate single dad looking for a payday. They were wrong. When Victoria Sterling, the ruthless billionaire CEO of Sterling Hale, jokingly dared her quiet assistant to swim across the freezing waters of Lake Geneva at midnight, she expected him to back down. She expected fear. Instead, Liam took off his shirt, looked her dead in the eye, and dived into the black water. But it wasn't the swim that broke the internet. It was what he asked for, when he crawled out half dead and shivering. He didn't want $1 million. He didn't want a promotion. He looked at the most powerful woman in Chicago and whispered a request that would shatter her carefully constructed empire to pieces. This is the story of the bet that changed everything. The rain in Chicago didn't wash things clean. It just made the grime slicker. Liam Bennett adjusted the collar of his frayed suit jacket, checking his reflection in the revolving glass doors of the Sterling Hale Tower. He looked tired. He always looked tired these days. At 32, he had the eyes of a man who had lived through 3 lifetimes of worry. He checked his watch, a battered Timex with a scratched face. 7:55 a.m. If he was 1 minute late, she would notice. Victoria Sterling didn't tolerate lateness. She didn't tolerate excuses, mistakes, or as she often put it, the mediocrity of the common man. She was the CEO of Sterling Hale, a multinational conglomerate that owned everything from pharmaceutical labs to shipping lines. At 34, she was a billionaire, twice over a woman whose face graced the cover of Forbes and Vogue in the same month. They called her the Titanium Queen. She was beautiful, sharp, and utterly devoid of warmth. Liam was her executive assistant, the 3rd one this year. The previous 2 had left in tears. Liam hadn't left because he couldn't afford to. He hurried across the marble lobby, nodding to the security guard, Frank. "Morning, Liam. You look like you went 12 rounds with a truck." Frank grunted. "Just a rough night, Frank. Mia was coughing again," Liam said, forcing a smile. Mia. His 6-year-old daughter. She was the center of his universe, a bright, artistic little girl, trapped in a body that was failing her. Severe brittle asthma and a compromised immune system meant expensive specialists, specialized air filters and medication that cost more than Liam's rent. His insurance covered the basics, but the new treatment, the experimental protocol at the Hopkinson Institute, was out of pocket and out of reach. The elevator ride to the 91st floor was silent. When the doors slid open, the air changed. It was cooler here, smelling of expensive white tea and ozone. Victoria was already at her desk. She stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out over the grey city like a monarch surveying a conquered kingdom. She wore a tailored black Givenchy suit that cost more than Liam's car. "You're 30 seconds late, Mr. Bennett," she said without turning around. Her voice was low, smooth, and terrified board members across 3 continents. "The L train was delayed, Miss Sterling. It won't happen again," Liam said, moving quickly to his desk to boot up his computer. "Excuses are the currency of the weak," she said, finally turning. Her eyes were a piercing icy blue, framed by sharp eyeliner. "I need the acquisition files for the Omnitech merger on my desk in 5 minutes, and cancel my lunch with Senator Davies. He bores me." "Yes, ma'am, and the files are already sent to your tablet. I did them last night." Victoria paused. She looked at him. Really looked at him for a fraction of a second. Efficient. Don't let it go to your head. The day was a blur of high-stakes negotiations and impossible demands. Liam was invisible, a ghost moving in the background, anticipating her needs before she voiced them. He poured her sparkling water, Vos never Perrier, before she asked. He had the legal team on line 1 before she realized there was a contract dispute. But his mind was elsewhere. Specifically on the voicemail he had received at 6 a.m. from Dr. Aris Thorne. No relation to the forbidden names, just a coincidence of the profession at the Children's Hospital. Mr. Bennett. This is Dr. Aris. We need to discuss Mia's latest lung function test. It's not what we hoped. The decline is steeper than expected. We need to look at the surgical option sooner rather than later. I know the deposit is steep, but give me a call. The deposit was $50,000. He had $400 in his savings account. Bennett. Victoria's voice snapped him back to reality. Are you daydreaming? I asked for the itinerary for the retreat. Right here, Miss Sterling. He handed her the leather-bound folder. The annual executive retreat. Every year, Victoria took the top 20 executives of Sterling Hale to a luxury location for a weekend of team building, which mostly involved them drinking expensive scotch and Victoria pitting them against each other in psychological games to see who would crack. This year, it was at her private estate on Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, a sprawling Gothic mansion on the water. You're coming, of course, she said, flipping through the pages. Liam froze. Ms. Sterling, I usually stay back to manage the office communications. I have responsibilities at home. She looked up, her eyes narrowing. It wasn't a request, Bennett. I need my assistant on site. The Omnitech deal is closing Monday morning. I need you there to handle the paperwork while I handle the sharks. Be at the private airfield at 5:00 p.m. But is there a problem? Her voice dropped an octave. It was the danger zone. Liam swallowed the lump in his throat. He would have to pay Mrs. Higgins, his neighbor, double to stay with Mia for the whole weekend. It would wipe out his grocery money for the month. But if he lost this job, he lost the insurance. If he lost the insurance, Mia died. No problem, Ms. Sterling. I'll be there. Good. And Bennett? Try to dress like you work for a Fortune 500 company, not a public library. She turned back to the window. Liam stared at her back, a sudden burning flash of anger cutting through his exhaustion. She had billions. She could buy the hospital wing Mia needed with the change in her purse. To her, money was a game. To him, it was oxygen. He didn't know it yet, but that weekend at Lake Geneva wouldn't just be about work. It would be the collision of two worlds that were never meant to touch. The Sterling estate on Lake Geneva was less a house and more a fortress of solitude built by a robber baron in the 1920s. Stone turrets rose against the darkening sky as the convoy of black SUVs pulled into the gravel driveway. The air up here was crisp, smelling of pine and deep water. Liam carried his battered duffel bag, feeling woefully out of place among the executives, dragging Louis Vuitton rollers. The VP of Finance, a heavy-set man named Arthur Pendergast, sneered at him. Carry my bag inside, will you, Bennett? My back is acting up. Liam took the bag without a word. He was the help. He knew his place. The interior of the house was staggering. A fireplace big enough to roast a car dominated the main hall. Servants in white jackets moved silently, with trays of champagne. Victoria stood at the top of the grand staircase, having changed into a stunning emerald green evening gown that clung to her silhouette like liquid metal. Welcome, she announced, her voice echoing off the stone walls. This weekend is about the future. Sterling Hale is evolving. Some of you will be part of that evolution. Some of you will be left behind. Enjoy the evening. It was a threat wrapped in a welcome. The executives laughed nervously, and reached for the alcohol. By midnight, the team building had devolved into a display of excess. The executives were drunk, loud, and competitive. They were gathered on the massive stone patio that overlooked the lake. The water was pitch black, the moon hidden behind thick clouds. It was October, and the temperature had dropped to near freezing. Liam stood in the shadows near the patio doors, holding Victoria's tablet, waiting for a signal that she needed him, or that he could finally go sleep in the servants' quarters. Victoria was sitting on a high-backed wicker throne, holding a glass of amber liquid. She looked bored. Arthur Pendergast was loudly boasting about his college rowing days at Yale. "I could swim this lake in my sleep," Arthur slurred, gesturing with a cigar. "Cold doesn't bother a real athlete." Victoria swirled her drink. "Is that so, Arthur? It's 3 miles across to the lighthouse. Water temperature is 42 degrees. Hypothermia sets in within 10 minutes for the average male." "I'm not average," Arthur laughed. "I'd bet my year's bonus I could do a mile." "Talk is cheap," Victoria said, her eyes gleaming with a predatory light. She stood up, commanding the attention of the room. "I'm bored with talk. I want to see conviction." She pulled a watch from her wrist. It wasn't just a watch. It was a Patek Philippe Grandmaster chime custom-made. It was worth more than most people earned in a lifetime. "This watch," Victoria said, holding it up so the diamonds caught the patio lights. "Versus your bonus. You swim to the buoy and back, roughly 400 yards. If you do it, you get the watch. If you don't, you resign. Tonight." Arthur paled. The bluster vanished. He looked at the black, churning water, then at the watch, then at Victoria's cold smile. 400 yards in freezing water was suicide for a drunk man in a suit. That's unreasonable, Victoria," Arthur stammered. "Coward," she whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. The crowd snickered. Victoria looked disgusted. "Is there not a single man in my executive suite with a spine? I'm surrounded by geldings." She turned to leave her gaze sweeping past the executives and landing by chance on the shadows near the door. On Liam. He hadn't moved. He was watching her with an intensity that surprised her. Usually he looked at the floor. "Bennett," she called out. The chatter stopped. "You're staring." "I'm waiting for your orders, Miss Sterling," Liam said, stepping into the light. Victoria tilted her head. A cruel idea formed in her mind. She wanted to humiliate the executives, show them that even her assistant had more guts than they did. Or maybe she just wanted to break the quiet man who always did exactly as he was told. "You were a lifeguard in college, weren't you? I saw it on your resume." "That was a long time ago, ma'am." "The offer stands for you too, Bennett," she said, her voice silky. "Swim to the buoy and back. If you make it, you get the watch. Sell it. Keep it. I don't care. It's worth $2 million. The air left the patio. $2 million. Liam looked at the watch. $2 million. That was the surgery. That was the recovery. That was a house with a filtered air system. That was Mia's life secured forever. "And if I don't make it?" Liam asked softly. Victoria laughed, a harsh tinkling sound. "Then you're fired, and I'll make sure you never work in this city again." The executives chuckled. It was a joke to them. A cruel game. Bennett was skinny, tired, and broke. He wouldn't do it. Liam looked at the water. It was deathly cold. He hadn't swum competitively in 10 years. His heart was hammering against his ribs. He thought of Mia's wheezing breath the night before. He thought of the look on Dr. Aris's face. He thought of the dignity he swallowed every single day, just to keep them afloat. Liam placed the tablet on a side table. He unbuttoned his suit jacket and folded it neatly. Then he loosened his tie. "Mr. Bennett." Victoria's smile faltered slightly. "I was joking. Don't be an idiot." "The buoy and back?" Liam asked, kicking off his cheap dress shoes. "That's the deal." "Liam, don't," Arthur said, surprisingly finding a conscience. "It's freezing. You'll cramp up." Liam ignored him. He looked straight at Victoria. "I don't want the watch." Victoria raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me. If I do it," Liam said, his voice steady for the first time in years. "I don't want the watch. I want a favor. One favor of my choosing. Anything I ask, and you have to grant it. No questions asked. A binding verbal contract in front of 20 witnesses." Victoria stared at him. The favor could be anything. Half her company, her resignation, marriage. But she looked at him, lean, worn-out Liam, and she saw zero chance of him surviving the cold. She was a gambler, and she never lost. "Fine," she said, her eyes narrowing. "One favor. Anything you want. But if you turn back even for a second, you're done. Understood?" Liam took off his shirt. He wasn't bulky like the executives. He was wiry, scarred from old manual labor jobs. He walked to the edge of the stone pier. The wind whipped his hair. He closed his eyes, pictured Mia's face, and dove. The shock of the water was absolute. It wasn't just cold. It was a physical blow, a sledgehammer of ice that knocked the air from Liam's lungs. For the first 10 seconds, he couldn't breathe. His chest seized his heart, stuttering in a frantic, erratic rhythm against his ribs. The darkness was total. He was submerged in ink, the only sound the roaring of blood in his ears. Get up, or you die." He kicked his limbs, feeling heavy and sluggish, like he was moving through molasses. He broke the surface, gasping for air, but the air was biting cold, stinging his throat. "He's actually doing it," someone shouted from the patio. The voice sounded miles away, distorted by the wind and the water. Liam didn't look back at the lights of the mansion. He knew if he saw the warmth, the safety, the golden glow of the world Victoria Sterling inhabited, he would turn back. And turning back was death. Not for him, but for Mia. He fixed his eyes on the blinking red light of the buoy. It looked impossibly far away. 400 yards. In a pool, it was a warm-up. In Lake Geneva at midnight in October, it was a death march. He began to stroke, front crawl, keep the head down, rotate, kick. 1, 2, breathe. 1, 2, breathe. The cold began to invade him. It wasn't a surface sensation anymore. It was drilling into his bones. His fingers went numb first, then his toes. He lost the sensation of the water moving against his skin. He was just a machine, a failing engine pushing through the void. 50 yards. His mind began to drift. He wasn't in the lake anymore. He was back in the hospital room with Mia. He saw her small, pale hand clutching the bedsheet. He heard the wheeze of the nebulizer. "Daddy, when can we go to the park?" "Soon, baby, when you're stronger." "I'm tired of being tired, Daddy." Rage flared in his chest, hot and bright. It was the only warmth he had. He was tired too. He was tired of counting pennies, tired of the pity in the doctor's eyes, tired of being invisible to people like Victoria Sterling, who treated human lives like poker chips. 1, 2, breathe. He swallowed a mouthful of lake water. It tasted of algae and rot. He choked, treading water for a second, panic clawing at his throat. The cold was tightening around his chest like a vice. His legs were cramping. "Don't stop!" The voice came from the shore. It wasn't Arthur's jeering. It was a woman's voice, sharp, imperious. Victoria. She was watching. Liam gritted his teeth so hard he thought they might crack. He forced his body horizontal again. "I will not die here. I will not let her win." He reached the boy. His hand slapped against the wet, slimy metal. He clung to it for a second, his breath coming in ragged, screaming gasps. He looked back. The mansion was a blur of light. He was halfway there. But the return trip was always harder. The adrenaline was fading, leaving only the exhaustion and the cold. He pushed off. The journey back was a blur of hallucinations. The water seemed to thicken. He thought something grabbed his ankle, a weed, a log, a hand. He kicked wildly, wasting precious energy. His vision started to tunnel. The lights on the shore were spinning. Hypothermia. His brain registered distantly. Confusion. Lethargy. The end. He stopped swimming. It was so easy to just stop, to let the water take him. It would be peaceful. No more bills. No more stress. Then he saw it. Not the mansion, but a mental image of Mia sitting alone in the waiting room, holding her stuffed rabbit, waiting for a father who would never walk through the doors. A primal scream tore from his throat, muffled by the water. He thrashed forward, abandoning form, abandoning technique. He clawed at the water with everything he had left. He swam with anger. He swam with love. He swam with the desperation of a father who would burn the world down to save his child. His hand hit stone. He grasped blindly the rough edge of the pier. He tried to pull himself up, but his arms were like wet noodles. He slipped back. "Grab him!" Hands seized his wrists. Strong hands. He was hauled upward, scraping his chest against the stone. He collapsed onto the cold patio, retching water, his body shaking so violently his teeth clattered like dice in a cup. A heavy wool blanket was thrown over him. Then another. "Get the heater." Now. Liam rolled onto his back, staring up at the night sky. The stars were spinning. A face loomed over him. Victoria Sterling. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't sneering. Her face was pale, her perfect composure shattered. Her blue eyes were wide, scanning him with something that looked terrifyingly like fear. She was kneeling on the stone in her $2,000 dress, her hands pressing the blankets down on his shivering form. "Bennett," she hissed. "Bennett, look at me." Liam's jaw was locked. "Did I win?" Victoria looked at him, blue-lipped, half-dead water pooling around him. She looked at the executives, standing in a silent, shamed circle behind her. Arthur Pendergast looked like he was about to vomit. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "You won." "You idiot! You won!" The recovery was a haze. Liam remembered being carried inside the heat of the fireplace, the sharp sting of brandy being forced down his throat. He remembered a doctor, Victoria's private physician, checking his vitals, murmuring about shock and severe exposure. He woke up the next morning in a room that was larger than his entire apartment. The bedsheets were silk. The sun was streaming through heavy velvet curtains. He sat up groaning. Every muscle in his body screamed. His lungs felt raw, scoured by the cold water. But he was alive. He checked the bedside table. His cheap Timex was there, dried off. 10 o'clock a.m. Panic surged. Mia. Mrs. Higgins. He scrambled for his phone, which had been placed next to the watch. He dialed Mrs. Higgins. Liam! Oh, thank heavens. The old woman's voice crackled. You didn't call last night. I was worried. I'm sorry, Mrs. Higgins. Work ran late. Very late. How is she? She had a bad night, Liam. The coughing kept her up. She's sleeping now. When are you coming home? Soon, I promise. He hung up, the weight of reality crashing back down. He had survived the swim. He had won the bet. But the victory felt hollow until he cashed in the chip. A knock at the door. Enter. The door opened, and Victoria walked in. She was back in her armor, a sharp grey suit hair pulled back tight. But there was a difference. She didn't march in. She walked in. And she didn't hold a file. She held a cup of coffee. Black. 2 sugars. That is how you drink it, correct? She asked, setting the cup on the nightstand. Liam stared at her. In 2 years, she had never known nor cared how he took his coffee. Thank you, Miss Sterling. She stood at the foot of the bed, her arms crossed. She studied him with an intensity that made him want to pull the covers up. You were reckless last night, she said. You could have died on my property. The legal ramifications would have been a nightmare. I signed a waiver when I was hired, Liam said, his voice raspy. Accidental death in the line of duty covers team-building exercises, I believe. Clause 14, Section B. Victoria's lip twitched, a ghost of a smile or a grimace. You know the contract better than legal does. She pulled a chair over and sat down. This was unprecedented. Victoria Sterling never sat. She stood, she paced, she dominated. Sitting was for equals. Arthur resigned this morning, she said quietly. He claimed health reasons. We both know it was shame. You broke him, Bennett. I didn't do it to break him. I know. You did it for the favor. She leaned forward, her eyes locking onto his. So let's have it. What do you want? I have my checkbook in my bag. 1 million. 2, I'll write it right now. We call it a bonus, tax-free. $2 million. It would solve everything. He could take the money, quit, move Mia to Arizona, where the air was dry, pay for the best doctors. It was the logical choice. It was the safe choice. But Liam Bennett was done with safe choices. He had realized something in that water. Money runs out. But power access. That was eternal, and there was something Mia needed that money couldn't buy because it wasn't for sale yet. I don't want your money, Victoria, he said, using her first name for the first time. She stiffened. Careful. I want the favor. Name it. Liam took a deep breath. This was it. The gamble to end all gambles. I know about Project Chimera. The color drained from Victoria's face. The silence in the room became deafening. I don't know what you're talking about. Sterling Hale Pharmaceuticals, Sub-Basement 4, the experimental gene therapy for autoimmune and respiratory degeneration. It's currently in Phase 1 trials. Animal testing only. No human subjects allowed. FDA strict lockdown. Victoria stood up slowly. The casual demeanor was gone. She was the titanium queen again, and she looked dangerous. You have been accessing classified files. That is a federal crime, Bennett. I could have you arrested right now. I didn't hack anything, Liam said calmly. I organize your files. I shred your documents. I listen to your calls when you think I'm invisible. You talk about it with Dr. Vargas every Tuesday at 4:00 p.m. He swung his legs out of bed and stood up. He was wearing a borrowed bathrobe, looking ridiculous, but he held himself with a dignity that matched hers. "My daughter Mia. She has severe brittle asthma complicated by an autoimmune deficiency. Her lungs are scar tissue. She is 6 years old and she is dying. The doctors say she has maybe 6 months before her heart gives out from the strain." Victoria watched him, her hand gripping the back of the chair. "Project Chimera is her only chance," Liam continued, his voice breaking slightly. "I've read the preliminary reports. The tissue regeneration in the subjects is 300%. It could rebuild her lungs." "It's experimental, Liam." Victoria snapped, her composure cracking. "It hasn't been tested on humans. It could kill her instantly. It could cause cancer. It's a volatile serum, not a cough drop." "She's dying anyway," Liam shouted. The raw emotion echoed off the walls. "She is dying, and I have to watch it happen every single day. I have to listen to her apologize for coughing. I have to see her try to draw pictures when her hands are shaking from the lack of oxygen." He stepped closer to her. "You promised me a favor. A binding verbal contract. Witnesses. Anything I want." "Liam, I want you to enroll Mia in Project Chimera. I want you to authorize the compassionate use protocol. I know you can do it. You're the CEO. You own the lab. You can override the safety board." Victoria stared at him. She looked at the desperation in his eyes, the absolute unwavering resolve. She realized then that he hadn't swum the lake for money. He had swum it for a chance to rob death. She turned away, walking to the window. She looked out at the lake, calm and blue, now hiding the violence of the night before. "If I do this," she said softly, "and she dies, it's on my hands. The board will crucify me. The FDA will shut down the entire pharmaceutical division. I could lose the company." "And if you don't," Liam said, "I lose my world." He waited. The clock on the nightstand ticked. Victoria turned back. Her face was unreadable. She walked past him to the door. She stopped with her hand on the handle. "Get dressed," she said. "We're leaving in 20 minutes. "Where are we going?" "To the hospital. If I'm going to risk my empire for a 6-year-old, I want to meet her first." "Is that a yes?" Liam asked, his heart hammering. Victoria looked back at him. Her eyes were still cold, but there was a new spark in them. Respect, curiosity. "That is a maybe, Bennett. Don't push your luck and shave. You look like a convict." The drive to St. Jude's Children's Hospital was accomplished in a silence so thick it felt pressurized. Victoria drove her own car, a silver Aston Martin that purred like a trapped panther in the Chicago traffic. Liam sat in the passenger seat, his hands gripping his knees, still wearing the borrowed clothes from the estate. He watched Victoria out of the corner of his eye. She drove with aggressive precision, weaving through lanes with the same ruthlessness she used in board meetings. She was a woman who calculated gaps and seized them. But saving a dying company was different from saving a dying child. "Stop fidgeting, Bennett," she said, shifting gears. "You're making me nervous, and I don't get nervous." "I'm sorry," Liam murmured. I don't know what you're expecting to see." "I expect to see a return on investment," Victoria said coldly. "If I am going to risk federal indictment, I want to know the patient has the fighting spirit to handle the serum. Chimera isn't for the weak. It rewrites the immune system. If she gives up halfway through, the biological shock will kill her." "Mia doesn't give up," Liam said, his voice hardening. "She's fought for every breath she's taken for 6 years. Victoria didn't reply. She just downshifted and sped up. When they arrived, the contrast was jarring. Victoria Sterling in her $4,000 suit and stilettos walking through the scuffed linoleum hallways of the pediatric ward. The air smelled of antiseptic and lemon cleaner. Nurses stopped and stared. It wasn't just her beauty. It was her aura. She moved like she owned the building, even though she had never stepped foot in it before. Liam led her to room 304. He paused at the door, his hand on the handle. She's likely hooked up to the nebulizer right now. It's loud. Open the door, Bennett. Liam pushed it open. The room was small, cluttered with the debris of a long-term stay. Drawings taped to the walls, vibrant, colourful sketches of dragons, castles and forests. In the centre of the bed, dwarfed by machines and tubes, sat Mia. She was pale, her skin almost translucent. Dark circles under her eyes made them look enormous. A plastic mask was strapped to her face, misting medication into her lungs. A rhythmic hiss, click, hiss filled the room. She looked up as they entered. Her eyes the same warm hazel as Liam's widened. She pulled the mask down despite the protest of the machine. Daddy. Her voice was a rasp, a whisper of wind through dry leaves. Hi, Bug. Liam said, the tension leaving his shoulders instantly as he rushed to her side. He kissed her forehead. How's the breathing? Sticky, she said. She looked past him to the tall, imposing woman standing at the foot of the bed. Who is she? Is she the queen? Liam smiled weakly. No, honey. This is my boss. Ms. Sterling. Victoria stepped forward. She didn't smile. She didn't use the baby voice most adults used with sick children. She looked at Mia with the same critical, analytical gaze she used to inspect prototypes. Hello, Mia, Victoria said. Your father tells me you like to draw. Mia nodded slowly. She reached for a sketchbook on her lap and held it up. It was a drawing of a knight fighting a 3-headed dragon. The detail was startling for a 6-year-old. The knight didn't have a sword. He had a shield. Why is he only holding a shield? Victoria asked, tapping a manicured nail on the paper. You can't kill the dragon with a shield. Liam started to interject. Ms. Sterling, she's just... Let her answer, Victoria commanded, not looking away from the girl. Mia looked Victoria in the eye. She didn't flinch. He isn't trying to kill the dragon. The dragon is sick. He's protecting it until it gets better. Victoria paused. The room went silent, save for the beeping of the heart monitor. Something flickered in Victoria's eyes, a crack in the ice. That is a foolish strategy, Victoria said softly, but a brave one. She walked to the side of the bed. She looked at the IV lines, the oxygen tank, the bruised skin, where too many needles had gone in. Does it hurt? Victoria asked. Yes, Mia said simply. Do you want it to stop? I want to go to the park, Mia said. Daddy promised me the swings, but I get too tired. Victoria looked at Liam. She saw the agony in his face, the helpless love of a father who would swim an ocean of fire for this fragile little girl. She looked back at Mia. She saw intelligence, but she also saw the shadow of death. It was grey and hovering. Bennett, Victoria said, turning sharply. Get Dr. Arris, and get the discharge papers. What? Liam blinked. We are moving her. Today. Moving her where? To the Sterling Hale Private Research Facility in the Loop. If we are going to do this, we are doing it on my turf with my equipment and my security. St. Jude's is a fine institution, but they play by the rules. We are about to break all of them. Just then, Dr. Arris entered a harried-looking man with a stethoscope around his neck. "Mr. Bennett, I heard you were back. And who is this?" "I am Victoria Sterling," she said, extending a hand. "I am taking over Mia Bennett's care." Dr. Aris scoffed, though he looked nervous. "Miss Sterling, I know who you are, but you can't just take over. Mia is in critical condition. She cannot be moved, and certainly not to a corporate facility. She is dying, Doctor," Victoria said, her voice dropping to that dangerous low register. "You told her father she has 6 months. My analysts suggest 3. You are treating the symptoms. I intend to cure the disease." "Cure?" Dr. Aris shook his head. "There is no cure for this level of autoimmune degeneration." "Not that you know of," Victoria said. She pulled her phone from her pocket. "I have a medical transport team arriving in 10 minutes. Helicopter, roof access. Have her ready." "I will not authorize this," Dr. Aris shouted. "It's malpractice. I'll call security." Victoria stepped closer to him. She was taller than him in her heels. "Call them. Call the police. Call the Pope for all I care. I own the company that manufactures the ventilator she is using. I own the patent on the drugs in that IV bag. I can buy this hospital and turn it into a parking lot by lunch." She leaned, in her voice a whisper of steel. "Do not stand in the way of the only chance this child has, or I will bury you in so much litigation your grandchildren will be paying off the legal fees." Dr. Aris paled. He looked at Liam. "Liam, you can't be serious. You're going to trust a CEO with your daughter's life." Liam looked at Victoria. He saw the arrogance, yes, but he also saw the determination. The same determination that built an empire. "She's the only one offering a shield, Doctor," Liam said quietly. "Pack her bags." The Sterling Hale Research Facility was less like a hospital and more like a spaceship. Everything was white chrome and glass. The air was scrubbed clean by military-grade filters. Maya was settled into a private suite that overlooked Lake Michigan. It had a massive TV, a velvet sofa, and a bed that looked like a cloud. But the luxury couldn't hide the terrifying reality of what was happening. Dr. Elena Vargas, the lead scientist of Project Chimera, was a small, sharp woman who looked like she hadn't slept in a decade. She was terrified. "Miss Sterling, this is insanity," Dr. Vargas hissed, pacing the observation room, while Liam and Victoria watched Mia through the glass. "The Chimera serum is unstable. In the primates, we saw a 40% rejection rate, cytokine storms, organ failure. If that happens to a human child, adjust the dosage," Victoria said calmly. She was sitting in a leather chair watching the monitors. "Dilute it. Micro-dosing over 48 hours instead of a single injection. Let her body adapt." "That's theoretically possible," Vargas admitted. "But we have no data." "Then we create the data," Victoria said. "Begin." Liam stood by the glass, his hand pressed against it. He felt like he was watching an execution. "If this goes wrong," he whispered. "It won't," Victoria said. But her hand resting on the armrest was gripping the leather so hard her knuckles were white. The procedure began at 8 p.m. Dr. Vargas and a team of 3 specialists in hazmat suits entered the room. They hooked Mia up to a dialysis-like machine that would cycle the serum into her blood. For the first hour, nothing happened. Mia watched cartoons. Liam sat by her side. Victoria had allowed him in, though she stayed in the observation room. He held her hand, telling her stories about the brave knight with the shield. At hour 3, the alarms started. Beep, 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 beep. Heart rate spiking to 160. No. Dr. Vargas's voice came over the intercom. Temperature rising. 102. 103. Daddy! Mia whined, her eyes rolling back. It burns. My chest burns. I'm here, baby. I'm here, Liam cried, panic clawing at his throat. He looked up at the glass window. He couldn't see Victoria, but he screamed at the reflection. Stop it! Stop it! It's hurting her. Stabilize her. Victoria's voice boomed over the speakers, overriding the panic. Vargas, push the corticosteroids. Dampen the immune response. Do not abort. If we don't abort, she'll seize, Vargas yelled back. If you abort, the shock kills her, Victoria countered. Push the steroids. Now, it was a gamble, a horrific high-stakes gamble with a child's life. Vargas injected the port. Mia convulsed once, her small body arching off the bed. Liam threw his body over hers, holding her down, tears streaming down his face. Please, please don't take her. Take me, please take me. Then the beeping slowed. Beep. 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 Heart rate stabilizing, Vargas breathed. Temperature dropping. 101. 100. Mia went limp in Liam's arms. She was unconscious, breathing heavily, but she was alive. Liam collapsed onto the floor by the bed, sobbing. He buried his face in the sheets. The door to the suite opened. Victoria walked in. She had removed her blazer. Her silk blouse was rumpled. She looked shaken. She walked over to where Liam was huddled. She hesitated, then did something she hadn't done in her adult life. She knelt down on the floor beside a subordinate. She's still with us, Liam, Victoria said softly. Liam looked up, his eyes red and wild. That was too close. It was, Victoria admitted. She looked at Mia's sleeping face. She is stronger than the primates. Much stronger. She reached out her hand, hovering near Liam's shoulder. Then she placed it there. Her hand was warm. It was a grounding weight in the chaos. Get some sleep, Bennett. I'll take the first watch. Liam looked at her stunned. You're staying? I started with this, Victoria said, sitting in the chair next to the bed and crossing her legs. I see my projects through to the end. For the next 3 days, a strange domesticity formed in the high-tech fishbowl. Liam and Victoria took shifts. They ate take-out Chinese food on the velvet sofa. Liam saw sides of Victoria the world never saw. He saw her pacing at 3 a.m., reading medical journals. He saw her gently wipe sweat from Mia's forehead when she thought Liam was asleep. He realized she wasn't just a machine. She was a woman who had locked her heart in a vault because she thought emotions were a liability. But Mia had picked the lock. On the 4th day, the storm broke. Not inside the hospital, but outside. Liam was in the cafeteria getting coffee when the breaking news flashed on the TV screen. Breaking billionaire, CEO, accused of illegal human experimentation. Liam dropped his coffee cup. It shattered, splashing hot liquid everywhere. On the screen, a reporter was standing outside the Sterling Hale Tower. Sources confirm that Victoria Sterling has kidnapped a terminally ill child from St. Jude's Hospital and is using her as a test subject for a dangerous unapproved drug known as Chimera. The whistleblower, a former executive at the company, claims the child is being held against her will. The screen cut to a photo of Arthur Pendergast. He looked solemn, fake concern plastered over his face. I tried to stop her, Arthur told the cameras. She's out of control. She thinks she's God. Liam ran. He sprinted back to the elevator, ignoring the burns on his legs. When he burst into the suite, Victoria was already on the phone. She was standing by the window watching the news helicopters that were beginning to circle the building like vultures. "I don't care about the stock price," she shouted into the phone. "Lock down the facility. No one gets in. Send the security team to the lobby. If the press steps 1 foot on private property, arrest them." She slammed the phone down and turned to Liam. Her eyes were blazing. "Pendergast," she spat. "He didn't just resign. He went to the board and the press." "They're saying you kidnapped her," Liam said, breathless. "They're saying you're torturing her." "The board is calling an emergency meeting in 1 hour," Victoria said, her voice tight. "They are going to vote to remove me as CEO, and they are going to demand we hand Mia over to Child Protective Services. If they take her off the treatment now—" Liam trailed off. The thought was unbearable. "She needs the second dose in 24 hours. If she stops now, her immune system collapses. She dies." Victoria walked over to him. She grabbed him by the lapels of his shirt. "I won't let them take her," she said fiercely. "I built this company. I built this fortress. But I can't fight the board and the police alone. I need you to trust me. Completely." "I trust you," Liam said without hesitation. "Good," she said. She let him go and walked to the closet, pulling out a fresh suit for him. "Put this on. You're not the assistant anymore, Liam." "What am I?" "You're the father," she said. "And we are going to go down to that lobby and face the wolves. We aren't going to hide. We are going to control the narrative. But first—" She walked over to the bed. Mia was awake, watching them with sleepy eyes. "Hi, Victoria," Mia whispered. She looked better. Her color was returning. She wasn't wheezing. Victoria smiled a genuine, soft smile that transformed her face. "Hi, Dragon Slayer." "Are the bad men coming?" Maya asked. She had heard the shouting. "Yes," Victoria said. "But remember what you said about the shield." Mia nodded. Victoria looked at Liam, her blue eyes burning with a resolve that terrified and mesmerized him. "I am the shield," Victoria said, "and God help anyone who tries to get past me." She turned to Liam. "The police are on their way with a warrant. We have 20 minutes. I have a plan, but it's dangerous. It involves a loophole in the company bylaws regarding family emergencies." "I'll do anything," Liam said. "Marry me," Victoria said. Liam choked. "What?" "The bylaws state that the CEO cannot be removed during a familial crisis without a 90% majority vote. Currently, they have 51%. If Mia is my stepdaughter, this becomes a family medical emergency, not a corporate experiment. It buys us 72 hours, enough time to finish the treatment and prove it works." "You want to get married now?" "My legal team is on the way with the papers. A judge owes me a favor. He's on speakerphone." Liam looked at the woman who had tormented him for 2 years, the woman who had saved his daughter's life, the woman who was currently proposing a sham marriage while helicopters circled the building. He looked at Mia, who was breathing clearly for the first time in her life. He looked back at Victoria. "I do," Liam said. The vow of silence. The ceremony was sterile, conducted via a tablet propped against a centrifuge. Judge Thorne, a contact of Victoria's, wasted no time. Victoria wore a blood-red blouse, looking less like a bride and more like a general preparing for war. Liam stood beside her, feeling like an imposter in the expensive suit she'd bought him. "Do you, Victoria Ann Sterling, take this man?" Victoria looked at Liam. For a fleeting second the mask slipped, revealing the terrifying fear she hid from the world. She wasn't doing this for the stock price. She was doing it because she had finally found something she couldn't bear to lose. "I do," she said firmly. "And do you, Liam?" Liam glanced at Mia sleeping in the glass-walled room. He looked back at the woman, who had terrorized him for 2 years now, standing as his daughter's only defense. "I do." "Then I pronounce you husband and wife. The papers are filed." The screen went black. There was no kiss. Just the heavy silence of a pact sealed in blood and ink. The siege minutes later, the lab doors burst open. Arthur Pendergast marched in, followed by Detective Miller and a frantic social worker. "There she is," Arthur shouted, pointing a shaking finger. "Arrest her. She's holding the child hostage for illegal experiments." Detective Miller stepped forward. "Ms. Sterling, we have an emergency custody order for Mia Bennett. Step away from the patient." Liam moved to block them, his heart hammering. "You're making a mistake." "He's brainwashed," Arthur yelled. "She bought him off." Victoria stepped out from behind Liam, moving with the lethal grace of a predator. She tapped her tablet, projecting a document onto the smart glass wall. It was a marriage certificate, time-stamped 20 minutes ago. "Mia Bennett is my stepdaughter," Victoria announced, her voice freezing the room. "Under company bylaws and state law, I have full legal guardianship. This is a family medical decision. You have no jurisdiction here." Arthur's jaw dropped. "It's a sham. It's a lie. It's a legal document," Victoria countered. "Now look at the patient." Everyone turned. Mia was sitting up. The grey pallor was gone, replaced by a healthy flush. She wasn't coughing. She breathed deeper, the air filling lungs that were no longer failing. "Daddy?" she asked clearly. "Why are they shouting?" The social worker gasped. Dr. Vargas stepped forward, checking the monitors. "Lung capacity is up 40%. The serum works. She's cured." Victoria turned to Arthur with a cold smile. "You called the police to stop a miracle, Arthur. Get off my property before I have you arrested for harassment." Defeated and humiliated, Arthur fled. The gamble had paid off. The aftermath. The story of the billionaire who married her assistant to save his daughter broke the internet, turning a corporate scandal into a modern fairy tale. Sterling Hale's stock skyrocketed. But inside the penthouse where they now lived, the reality was a polite, strange roommate situation. 3 months later, Mia was fully recovered. One snowy evening, Liam found Victoria on the balcony. "The lawyers drafted the divorce papers," she said without turning. "The crisis is over. Mia is safe. You'll get a generous settlement. You won, Liam. Go be happy." "I don't want the settlement," Liam said, stepping beside her. "Why not?" "Because the happiness is here." Victoria froze. "Liam, I am a monster in a suit. I don't know how to be a wife." "I don't need a wife," Liam said, taking her hand. "I need a partner. I need a shield. I fell in love with you, Victoria. Not the CEO, but the woman who jumped into the fire for a drawing." Victoria stared at him, searching for an angle, but found only honesty. Tears welled in her eyes. The titanium queen was finally melting. "I don't want a divorce," she whispered. Liam smiled and kissed her. It tasted of snow and victory. Epilogue. The Real Bet. 1 year later, the Sterling estate on Lake Geneva was filled with the sound of children playing. It was Mia's 7th birthday. Liam sat on the pier legs, dangling over the water. Victoria sat down next to him, looking softer, happier. "I never told you the real bet that night," she said, leaning on his shoulder. "The watch versus the bonus. No, the bet I made with myself." She smiled. "I was drowning in boredom and money, Liam. I told myself that if one man on that patio had the guts to be real, I would change my life. You didn't just swim the lake. You pulled me out." Liam kissed her forehead as Mia's laughter rang out behind them, a sound of pure life echoing over the water that had changed everything. And that is how a desperate single dad and a ruthless billionaire CEO found salvation in the freezing waters of Lake Geneva. Liam Bennett didn't just win a bet. He broke down the walls of a woman the world thought was heartless. And in doing so, he saved his daughter's life. It's a reminder that sometimes the biggest risks yield the greatest rewards. What do you think? If you were in Liam's shoes, would you have jumped into that freezing water? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share and subscribe so you never miss our next story. Thanks for listening.